Hi everyone, just to introduce myself, I'm Emily Pallo, a director from Airchamber Gaunt, and ran the BCO Next Gen committee this year, competition this year alongside the Next Gen BCO Next Gen committee. Today I'm joined by Lucy Sutcliffe and Iona Norton from Arup, who submitted a really interesting submission called A Day to Night Outfit. Thank you both for joining me for this interview, and congratulations on being shortlisted on your proposal. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions about your submission. Iona, can you introduce a summary of your team's idea?
Yeah, sure. As Emily said, I'm Iona, and Lucy and I together put together a proposal called A Day to Night Outfit. And I think our main idea was that, kind of prompted by the COVID pandemic, to look at how office buildings are being used and the opportunity to perhaps use empty office space. And that kind of prompted us to think, actually, maybe office buildings aren't being entirely used during non-pandemic times as well. And so I think the big opportunity we saw was that office buildings at the moment are being, there are huge swathes of London being unused, and then outside of a pandemic, office buildings aren't used for half of their lifetime, i.e. at night. And so we thought, well, what could these spaces be used for? And kind of came up with the idea of a timeshare tenancy. So office buildings could be used for two different uses. So something during the day and something at night. And we thought, how could we apply this to fulfill a social need? And so the idea was, how could we use office buildings through a timeshare tenancy to provide emergency homeless shelter and be used kind of to fulfill what is quite an enormous problem in London.
Thank you. And then the next question is to Lucy. And I was just wondering, what was your main inspiration behind A Day to Night Outfit? Was there a particular precedent that you saw that did something similar? Or what kind of inspired you to come up with the idea?
So I think there's quite a lot of conversation about this sort of stuff at the moment, but probably the biggest impetus for us was we saw an article by Sadiq Khan, who had kind of a call to arms saying, if you've got spare office space, you're not using it for overnight, for either short to medium term home shelters for people who rough sleepers in London, this is your time to come forward and give something back to the community. So we started at this point. We linked up with the fact that we had these open spaces which aren't being used in offices, and we put the two together in order to come up with a day to night outfit.
And the next one is, so I was thinking, in light of the current pandemic, perhaps you could say a little bit more about how you think this concept of co-use may become more prevalent. And also, do you think there are particular uses that you think would suit themselves particularly well to this kind of timeshare tenancy model? I know you kind of suggested a few within your submission. Is there a few that you think stand out as working particularly well together?
So I guess, yeah, I think the pandemic has probably prompted everyone to kind of rethink what normal design is like, and we've all seen a big shift in the way we operate our day-to-day lives, and so maybe we've started to be a bit more open to something that we might have thought is too difficult, or that we would have thought buildings could flex to do. I mean, we've all started to use our homes as workspaces, which we didn't know when we moved into these homes. So, and then in terms of uses, like particular building types that might be more suited to a timeshare tenancy, I think the main opportunity we saw was that office buildings are typically used only during the day, and so and they're already multiple ownership, often in the same building. So a lot of the systems are already in place to allow the building to be shared between different users, and so this is kind of taking that one step further and not just sharing the space throughout the building, but also sharing it over time. And I guess the sharing the office space with the idea to provide shelter is probably to do with thinking about, well, what uses are there that a building can be used for at night and only at night, and also that wouldn't require too many, wouldn't introduce too many different constraints on the building.
I was also, to follow on this, like an actual specific use as well as this, I was talking to someone about just this morning, was thinking about even using kind of kitchens, that you've got commercial kitchens in offices a lot of the time. Especially, like, I'm thinking specifically COVID pandemic, we've had lots of takeaways, people aren't going to restaurants, but like a pop-up kitchen sort of idea, either for kind of commercial uses like that, or again, giving that back to community. That was something that someone said today, and I was like, oh yeah, that also is a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing is a really interesting concept, and specifically how you kind of have office uses alongside other uses and how they interact, and how that means you've got to kind of design the office spaces slightly differently to accommodate for both of those things. And just leading on from that, this question's to do with sustainability. So I was just thinking, with all the net zero kind of carbon targets rapidly approaching, perhaps one of you could touch on how, using the model of intensively using buildings throughout the day and into the night could be used to address some of these net zero carbon targets. But how does the concept feed into supporting those?
We can probably both answer this, but so I'm a structural engineer, and kind of our aim as structural engineers is to reduce the amount of new materials used. So by combining two buildings into one, we're reducing one whole building. We use something new, something in that, from a pre-use construction point of view, there are very real benefits to this sort of model. And then Iona can talk more about the kind of operational side of it all.
Yeah, I guess the operational side, I guess from the point of view of net zero, so obviously, as Lucy's kind of said, there's like the embodied carbon element and then operational. And I think there's actually probably more challenges to do, I guess. So there would be, by using one building to fulfill two purposes, you wouldn't need to duplicate so many of the building like mechanical systems, and so again, embodied carbon and pipe work and all of that would be reduced. But operationally, there might be more challenges around kind of metering and control strategies that might be more suited to one use than another. But again, just something that needs to be designed for at the beginning.
Perfect. And then the next thing I was wondering is, what do you think the main kind of challenges would be around kind of adopting this model, and how do you think they could be overcome?
I think a lot of it would be buy-in from kind of people who use the offices day to day, and the owners and developers, and for them to kind of see that this is a real system that could work. I mean, not so long ago, people were saying, oh no, you can't work from home, it won't work, we need everyone in the office, but that's been proven wrong. So I think some open-mindedness from the people who can make decisions and who kind of design authority in this would probably be the kind of biggest thing to overcome the main obstacles from kind of the stakeholder engagement.
I think, yeah, definitely like getting people's buy-in, and but also making people see that it is to their benefit as well, because there should be a business case for it, and if you're using the building for less time, then you maybe pay less rent for the space, and the other use of the building at night also has a value, and money would be going to provide homeless shelters otherwise, so it's not purely charitable. So I guess, as well as the kind of, we should be making sure that it's to everyone's benefit. That's
Yeah. And then lastly, I was just kind of wondering, what do you think, I mean, what is like the one thing that you'd like to see more of in the industry by 2025?
I think for me, something I really want to see more of is people taking more ownership over socially responsible design. So not just designing what they think a client wants, but designing what they know the community needs.
I think I want to see stuff like more social mobility within this industry specifically. So that kind of comes from recruiting from different areas and better structured apprenticeships as well. Because for me, I find that working in more diverse teams and with different points of view, without fail comes out with a better outcome and a better and a well thought out design.
And yeah, in terms of your design and generally, I just think it's great. I really like how the concept is really inclusive and it thinks about, you know, different uses of the building and how, you know, designing office space can be much more than just designing the space, and how it can actually give back and contribute towards, you know, community and more socially driven uses. So it was great. Thank you both for your interview, and yeah, well done on your submission.
Thank you.